Hello!
And welcome to Every Season Counts, the podcast.
The place where we're going to have fun and raw chats about all things faith and life.
So pull up a pew, grab a coffee, it's going to be so much fun.
Hi guys.
Hey guys.
Good afternoon.
Nice to see you
Welcome
again.
back. How are you guys doing?
We've just had a great toasty.
Fan dabby dozy,
We did.
thanks.
Thank you, Mads.
Cheeky
Pesto
little
and
Baz is
mozzarella.
honestly-
Mozzie toasty.
Hostess with the mostess. No doubt.
It was fine until my brother turned up and then didn't have any food for him.
Typical. Sorry, Toby.
Oopsie. Anyway, how are we all doing on this fine Saturday afternoon?
Pretty good.
Yeah, great.
Pretty glonky.
That's literally only what I said. I was like, no one actually knows what that word is.
If you know, you know.
Every time I say it, people are like,
Pretty glonky.
pretty glongy. Anyway, what are we talking about today then?
We're going to have a little chat about body image.
Another lovely light topic for the agenda.
I guess my question for you guys is, have you ever struggled with loving your body?
Never ever.
Literally, being confident since day dot.
I slay this life. No jokes, yeah, of course.
Kidding. Yeah.
It's a big one.
Mm.
I think what's beautiful as well is we are all actually like quite different shapes, which, I mean, everyone has different shapes and sizes, but you know what I mean? It's like, this is coming from three girls that are all pretty different.
Yeah.
Some long, some not so long.
Yeah. And I think also like insecurity around body image has presented itself differently in different times of life, like as when you're a teenager, even when you're a child, really, sadly, and into adulthood. I think it's looked different for me. I don't know about you guys.
That probably could be a good place to start as well. It's like, do you guys like feel like there's like a set time where you were like bit like that knowledge sort of like imparted on you of like, oh, I'm aware of what my body looks like and I'm not happy about it, or I want to change it?
Yeah.
I know that I was 8 years old,
Bruh.
which is really sad to think about now, because
That's so sad.
I look at like my little sisters who are 11, 12, and one of them 7, and I'm like, I look at her and I'm like, I was like that old, and I was looking at myself in the mirror and just being like, I'm not happy with this, which is so sad because I was a child, and to think that any child would think, oh, I'm not okay with the way I look is really sad to think about. But I don't know necessarily where it would have come from. I don't know if it's just from like watching movies and things and comparing myself to actresses and people in magazines kind of thing. But yeah, I think for me when I was little, it was a lot around comparison.
What's crazy as well is like I mean, it sounds so old because we're not old, but like we technically didn't grow up in like we didn't grow up in social media. Like it came when we were like teenagers, and obviously have still very much been affected by like the exposure of it. But I just think about like, yeah, like your sisters, people who are like now like 13, 14, who actually have grown up probably from the age of like
5-year-olds on TikTok.
Yeah. And like they're young and just being exposed to these like like unrealistic body image, like what your body should look like, it like what your body shouldn't look like, and I just think it's actually disgusting, like really bad.
Yeah. I think I probably first became aware of my body going into secondary school, because in primary school I think I was very just blissfully unaware, and then suddenly I was in year 7 and everyone knew like what sex was, and I was like, excuse me? What do you mean? And like everyone was more aware of like, you know, I'd be like around boys and they'd be like, oh, she's attractive or whatever, and I hadn't really been in that kind of context before, and then all of a sudden I was like, oh, there's a certain way we're supposed to look, in inverted commas, because there's not, and And I think from then on, really, I was way more aware of my body and like how I looked and, you know, how I went to school, like doing my hair and makeup and stuff. Like before that in primary school, I just, which I'm glad, but I just was a bit carnage.
Yeah, which is kind of beautiful of that, like obviously it speaks about in the Bible, like having like a childlike spirit. Like I think especially in like comparison and body image, like to just be able to like go to like the beach and literally like it's not even a consideration that like it wasn't even like it literally wasn't a consideration. Like I didn't even have like a concept that I didn't like was
So
supposed
true.
to look any different.
Yeah.
Like I didn't even really care what I looked like I just
wanna be
was
seen.
like running around with my brothers. Like it was such a like
Mm.
blissfully unaware.
Yeah, that is so nice actually.
And it is like, but I think as well what is baffling, and I was just thinking this as you said it, body image is literally like, and it's not all to do with this, but like the standards have been set to do with sex.
Oh girl.
Like the whole thing's around sex. Do you understand how baffling that actually is?
Yeah. And like dressing for the male gaze and stuff.
It's
and, like,
so bad.
yeah.
Like I've only just really been like, oh, it's literally the whole thing.
Yeah.
It's to do with
Like
what
what
people
people
find
deem
sexually,
attractive.
sexually attractive.
Yeah.
Mm.
No, it is literally nuts. Mads, share as much as you want. No pressure on deepness. But like, what's your experience been with your body image and like security/insecurity?
Yeah. It's kind of a, like, very thankfully it's sort of something I have to look back on. But then also it is it's kind of funny because it's actually something very present that I am currently like have been faced with, but in quite a different way of like body image. So yeah, it's definitely still something I struggle with. But I think that one of my biggest things at the moment, I mean actually yeah, currently one of my biggest things is more I've accepted a lot of stuff about myself as fact of like, oh, like you just aren't beautiful, and like, oh, like your body just isn't attractive, and like like you just won't be seen as sexy like ever really. And so like, but I've like accepted them as fact, so it's not painful, but it's also like, oh, actually that's like really bad and like not right that I have just like settled on that.
Yeah.
And so then it's actually been quite painful to try and pull that back up and like break the molds of that, of like,
Yeah.
oh no, Mads, like actually like you're worthy of feeling beautiful and you're worthy of like feeling attractive. But that's a whole other thing. But I think when I was younger, I mean it's not a whole other thing, it's very real, but yeah, I think I've always been quite aware of being like, I've always been tall, and then like from puberty, like was never like stick thin, like have always been like kind of curvy, and like that's sort of like fluctuated through like, yeah, just teenage years of how like the degree of like my weight and stuff. But yeah, I think for like through school I don't think I was necessarily like bothered about what I looked like, but it was more I just wanted to seem sexy. So like, which is so weird, like literally being 14 trying to be sexy, that is such a joke. Like you're literally 14, like
You're a child.
stresses me out now, like now that I like, yeah, when I think about that age of like even like year 7, like
Yeah.
just yeah, wanting to come off as like sexually attractive and like comparing myself to literally like a 25-year-old fully formed woman. Like it is actually outrageous if you really think about it. But yeah, and then I think from sixth form probably till like now, to be perfectly honest, have had like a real thing of like not feeling feminine, which is probably quite a vulnerable thing, of being like, I'm not tiny, like I'm taller than a lot of boys, which isn't funny, but it also is, like, and just trying to navigate that of being like, I often like for a long time didn't feel feminine. I don't dress like I feel like my style as such isn't like adherently feminine, which is absolutely fine because it shouldn't be a mold, but like I don't know, just for a long time I was very aware of like what I wore, of being like, oh, like, do people think I'm masculine? Because I'd say I don't feel masculine, but like, I'm tall and I like wearing hoodies. Does that make me masculine?
Yeah.
So like, yeah, and again, that is something I'm very much like navigating at the moment, of just being like, yeah, it is that whole thing of like, sorry, why am I dressing for the male gaze? Like, it is such a real thing. And like, actually, our whole, I would say, culture as a female is literally set around the male gaze. I'm just going to put it out there. And it's beautiful that there is like this it seems like there's a movement of breaking that at the moment. But I think like, yeah, I just think like, if I'm being honest, I think a lot of it does come from that, like, I want to be married at some point, and I'm like aware of, like, there's definitely awareness of me of being like, if there's a guy I fancy, I want him to not think I look like a boy. Which they definitely don't, and that is like such a lie in my head, because every time I've ever brought it up, people are literally like, sorry, what? Like, and it is such a like, thing of the enemy of just like this like, it's like barbaric, really. I think a lot of my, I think maybe mine's not really body image anymore, it's more image, like just my image. Like of I think just really trying to like actively break my own mind of like, like even today, like me and Lids were chatting, and like we're going to a wedding next weekend, and I was like, I want to wear heels, but I'm literally going to be 6'3".
No problem
if I wear heels, which is, there is no problem with that, but like it is that thing of like, boys are going to think like, which I just don't like, when I'm really in the right headspace, I'm like, I actually don't care, like I really don't. But it's that I really do think it is this society, like from so many years, like it's like ingrained in you of like, oh, what a boy's gonna think. I'm actually embarrassing boys if I'm taller than them. That is audacious.
Gosh. No, you are literally that. You've just literally hit the nail of my school life on the head.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Oh my gosh. Like, you know, like the scene in Miranda when she's like kind of sat like stood really weirdly in front of that man, and then like runs around like galloping. It's kind of in a weird way. That is literally, that used to be me. Like, I used to literally get a hip ache from like sticking one leg out so much to try and make myself shorter. How strange is that?
Yeah.
Back yourself, tall queen.
But that's what I mean of like this, it's this ingrained thing of like, I don't
make people feel.
Yeah, like I don't appreciate being tall, and then other people don't appreciate me being tall either. Which is just like, no one actually cares that much. Like, I have seen other tall girls and I'm like, oh, she's tall. That's it. Yeah. There is nothing else around it. It's just an observation. Like, oh yeah, she's quite tall. Yeah. And like, and so I think mine is sort of a double. I mean, everyone can find stuff to pick at themselves on, but I think mine has always been this double lingo of like height and width. Of like, I just haven't been happy with with a lot of stuff. But I'm really trying to like, break dressing for the male gaze, and like, because I actually love what I wear. I think it looks sick. And
it's true.
The whole boy thing is another whole situation. But I just think, I had this conversation with a friend recently where we were like gassing each other up of like, if I want to wear a backwards cap, I'm going to wear a backwards cap. And like, I don't even care about the male gaze. Like, and we just were like talking about all these things that we literally haven't done, because we're like, oh, that's quite a masculine thing to do. Or like, oh, like, that's not what girls do. Like, nah, screw that. Like,
what a girl's supposed to do. Yeah. Like, do you know what I mean? The reason, like, the only thing we see is like films and models and people who are literally paid to have other people make them look a certain way. Yeah. Like, and that's what we're using as our reference point for everyday life. Like, that is nuts. Like, if you actually think about it.
But I also think boys have never put that pressure on me. As in, like, there has never been guys that are like, Mads, you dress really masculine. Like, if I speak to a guy, they're literally like, I don't know. Like, they don't care. Like,
they don't even notice.
No, they fully do not notice. Like, and so that's another thing. It's like, I have fully put this on myself, because girls don't put it on me and boys don't put it on me either. And it is this like society thing of like, it is that just like water, like splashing water in your face of like, yeah, it's just not that deep. Like, but it also, again, is very real. It's such a subjective thing. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you only know how you feel about your own body. But yeah.
Before I kind of kick off into my story and my experience in body image, I just want to put a little disclaimer out there that part of my story involves my struggles with eating. If this is something you are currently struggling with or have struggled with in the past and you would rather not listen, then that is totally fine. Please skip forward like 5 minutes, listen to Beth's story. But yeah, I just thought I'd give that little disclaimer before I start. I guess my kind of issues and struggles with body image started like to become really evident when I was 13 or 14 years old. I just remember every morning and every evening looking at myself in the mirror and really not feeling happy with what I saw, which as I look back now is a really sad thing, and I'm very thankful that I've kind of not finished my journey but have gone through a journey and am on like a completely different wavelength to what I was when I was 13, 14. But I just remember really not loving what I saw, and it was a really difficult time, like really difficult. I would pick apart every part of myself and would never fully be fulfilled with what I saw. And it was an ongoing battle that I went throughout secondary school. That is probably when for me it became most evident. I think there's a moment that always has stuck out for me. And for a little backstory, for those who don't know, when I was 13, 14, fancied Toby, my now husband. I liked him for a long time before we got together.
It's flipping stalker vibes. This was like...
Or true love, some would say.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Just to play the other side. Now they're married.
Who'd have thunk it? Anyway, yeah, go on.
I just remember one day, I don't know how it even came up in conversation, but I was having a conversation with a friend of mine, and I think she asked a question like, I don't even know. Anyway, somehow I remember saying, oh, I just don't think I'm his type. Maybe I'm not his type. And I just remember her looking at me and just saying, oh, well, maybe if you lost some weight, you might be.
Literally, what the actual heck?
It's a helpful comment from a friend.
Honestly, makes my blood boil so
Sorry,
hard.
but who? Do you know what? Carry on, Lids.
The thing is, right, as soon as they said this comment, they probably didn't even think about it again. But for me, because of my mindset, because of the struggles that I was already facing behind closed doors at home, like, I would not stop thinking about this comment. It was the biggest thing for me to have my internal thoughts that I already had about myself literally spoken directly in front of me. It just hovered over me for the rest of the day. Like, I remember going home and Googling all of this stuff, like fast ways to lose weight. Like, I'm desperate to change the way that I looked. But I did it in such an unhealthy and unhelpful way, to the point that I was skipping meals, telling my mum, oh, I don't want to eat dinner, I'm not hungry. So she'd give me smaller portions, and then I wouldn't eat those smaller portions because I really wasn't hungry. And saying things like, oh, I had a big lunch. I didn't. I would say all this stuff to get out of like making it a thing. Like, I just remember getting into this like routine of really unhealthy habits of eating. Like, my reasonings for doing it wasn't because of the comment that this person had made. Like, it's not one comment that made me fall into these bad habits. Like, it was so many thoughts that I had about myself, and these lies that I had built up in my head of, oh, okay, a person looked at me like that. That obviously means that they don't like the way that I look, so I've got to change the way that I look. There was just these constant things in my head these lies that I had let in and cloud over the truth of what God says about me, that had just circulated my mind and spiraled me into this lull of the way that I saw myself. Like, oh, I've got to fix this. How can I fix this? And of course, the way that I did that was not healthy at all, not good in any way. But by the time that I had realised, oh, this isn't good for you, Lydia, why are you doing this? It was a really big struggle to get out of that, to the point that I had to seek help to get out of this kind of cycle that I was in, which, can I just say, is absolutely fine. There is nothing wrong with asking for help, but it took a lot for me to get to a place where I was okay to ask for help and actually admit the cycle that I was in. So yeah, it was a struggle to kind of go through that, and a lot of things in my mindset led me into this place. And so yeah, that's kind of like a struggle that I went through. It's a journey, and there are still days where I sometimes struggle, but it's definitely affected me. Something that is I find so beautiful about my recovery journey, I guess you could say, that of the season that I went through, is that when I was open to people, they were so good at speaking truth over me. Things that I was so clouded by because of all the negative thoughts and opinions of myself that I had spoken over myself. They were able, once I was open, to do the opposite. Toby was one of those people for me. When we started dating, he was so good at speaking God's truth over me and not letting the lies speak louder. And I think that's so important when you're going through something, to open up to those closest to you, whether it's a partner, a friend, a family member, to be open to the person and the people that you trust and you're closest with, and allow them to speak truth over you. But I think it's so important to allow people to help you in those situations, and that does take a step and it does take courage, but I think it's so good once you do take that step to do that.
Yeah, come on. And I think it probably is like a thing to say as well, like if you do struggle with eating, or like are listening to something, like listening to what Liz is saying, and it's like, oh, I actually do, like that is me, like please do reach out on Instagram or Facebook, and like I mean, try and reach out to someone that knows you, but like even if you don't know anyone, please do reach out, because like that is again something to be journeyed, and like we aren't just saying this to speak at you, but like this is something we want to journey with people if it is something that is part of your life at the moment. But yeah, thank you so much, Liz, for
thank you
being so vulnerable about it. I think one thing that it makes me think about is like what is it's being stemmed by, which we obviously know is like it is the media, and as well, like even to go to an extreme, I think porn is a massive one of like not just style but body image of like what your body is expected to look like. And then as you're growing up into teenage years, if you see, I mean, you don't even have to watch porn, just watch a film, like any films like that have any like pornographic images or whatever, like the fact that I would go to the extreme of 8-year-old Lydia's mind, or our minds are being affected through the stream of like porn, I would say, like even if we're not open to it, of like, because it's being like porn's being passed into someone else, and then they're having an effect on us, and then we're like, and so it's this like cycle of like it's literally from this unrealistic like view of lust, feeling lust, how can we make people feel lust, like
it's really weird,
and then we completely revolve our lives around it. If you actually like put it into a sentence, it's actually outrageous
when you break it down.
Yeah,
like how much time you spend thinking about it, it's nuts.
Crazy, like crazy. how have you like navigated that? Would you say, Beth, like not porn,
Not specifically that,
but like body image?
I
mean, you can talk about porn if you want.
don't want to cut you off.
Yeah, but
no, I think it's my relationship with my body has been a really interesting one. I think in terms of, it's definitely been up and down through like different times of my life. But I think ever since I was really young, I've always had it spoken over me like, oh, you're so skinny. Like, really, like, even my family members would be like, oh, aren't you skinny? Like, was just a really normal comment. And I think, like, as I grew up, that was kind of the thing that I was like, okay, that's what I've got going for me. Like, to be honest, like, that was where I was like, okay, cool. At least that's sorted. Which is weird anyway, I think. But that's where my mind was, like, based off, like, what, like, I was seeing and being told and, like, spoken over me. And then I think, like, as I got older throughout school, obviously your body starts to change because you're not a child anymore.
Yeah.
And I would compare myself to when I was, like, 13. And then again, when I was 21, I compare myself to when I was, like, 17, 18. Of being like, oh, like, that dip's in a different place now. Or where are these stretch marks coming from? And, like, these things, it's just, like, this is your body and you're growing up and it changes. But I was like, what do you mean? Like, when that's like what I've like really had like rooted myself in. And so much so, like, even the other way of being like maybe I'm too skinny. Like, I feel like there's just such like broad spectrum of body image and of like how we're speaking over people, because it's not just one way. I think it is the other way as well. And like, I think any change in my body, I just was like, I would freak out about, and I'd be like, well, how do I make it go back? Like, and I think probably only in the last couple of years, really, I've really had to like sit down with myself and look at it practically, like, of being like, okay, this is the shell of like who I am. Like, actually the least interesting thing about me. Like, no one's looking at me and being like, she's got a thigh gap or she doesn't. No one actually cares. And I think then of being like, just like learning how to nourish and look after your body doesn't mean going so far the other way. And I think that's where I really struggled with like walking along that line of how do I care for my body and exercise and eat well without then getting obsessed of being like, oh, I can stay looking 16 forever.
Yeah.
It's not true. You can't. And so I feel like now it's up and down, but I feel like on the whole, I'm more in a place of just being like, actually just finding the whole thing quite weird.
Really weird.
Like we were just saying, like, when I think about it, even when I think about like us building muscle and six packs and stuff, it's just so strange actually that we're like so fixated on looking a certain way when it's not even relevant really to anything we do. Like, there's a difference between feeling strong and like physically fit and being like, I can do stuff because of this, to being like, I aesthetically want to look this way because of how that Victoria's Secret model looks.
Yeah.
Like, it's actually just quite odd, I think. And so I think just like for me, it's just been more, like practically looking at it and just being like, how do I enjoy life without being so aware?
It's such a weird balance. And like, this is a balance I'm currently trying to get, of like this balance of, it doesn't matter what you look like, but then also being like, but I don't want to become numb to actually the fact that I have been made beautifully and actually I am beautiful.
Yeah.
Of that, like, because I would say I went the extreme end of, it doesn't matter what I look like, it doesn't matter what I look like, and then being like, I wasn't put on this earth to look beautiful, which is true. You weren't put on it to look beautiful, but
you are.
but you are. And it's that like, because I went so far to the extreme of being like, oh well, I'm never going to be beautiful and I'm not seen as beautiful, but that's okay because I wasn't put here for that. But actually, like, that is true. Like, it's true that I wasn't put here to be beautiful, but I was shaped and molded so in detail by my creator, and he, like, actually I have been made to be beautiful. And it's this really
like
weird,
that's just like your inherent thing.
Yeah,
is like literally like we spoke about, I think, in our very first episode ever, of like the fearfully and wonderfully made thing and being molded by God.
Yeah,
of like he spent time on you and just being like, okay, great, I am who I am.
Yeah,
sick, but like not. I think for me, I'm just like, I don't want it to take away from the beauty of the moment I'm in.
Exactly.
Because I'm so fussed about like whether my bum looks a certain way in a pair of trousers.
Yeah.
I'm not going to remember that when I'm 60, 70, 80.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think a question I have for like you guys as well is, I was having this conversation with a friend recently, and we were basically speaking about, because I was like saying to her, she was speaking to me about like her like struggle with body image and beauty standards and stuff, and I was basically saying that whole like, but like God has molded you so beautifully, and she was like, it's that whole thing of like, I know God molded me beautifully, but it's not his validation I care about, of like, that sounds really weird, but she's like, I'd rather that specific boy find me beautiful than God. And that whole thing of like, you're my dad, you have to say I'm beautiful.
Yeah.
And like really trying to like actually like ingrain it of being like, oh no, like God's opinion of me matters. And he literally thinks I am so gorgeous. Yeah. Because we're so on this earth of like, Dad, I don't care what you think, you have to say that. But that boy doesn't find me attractive, or I don't think he finds me attractive, and actually he's the one I want to find beautiful. And so like, firstly, how do you say, like, I didn't know what to say to her, because I was like, yeah, I get it, like, what do you say, like, when I was having the conversation with the friend. But also that like, like, what do you do when you're like, actually I'd rather Troy Bolton find me fit than God, like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's so true. Because I feel like just our human standing is like, we want to be loved and we want to be affirmed, and we want for people to be like, you're this way or whatever the other way. Like, that's just naturally how we are. But the only person that is going to do that is Jesus. Like, the only person who's going to be like, I love you enough to literally lay everything down. Yeah. Like, everything. Even on like your worst day, even in whatever season you're in. Like, he is the only one who is like, fine, I'll take all of it for you. And I feel like, I mean, I completely get it. And I think like, when we've been thinking that way for so long, it's really hard to like begin to undo. But I think that's the importance of these conversations, because I think I've been given so much permission and freedom from my friends who have been like, Beth, it doesn't matter, like, it really doesn't matter how you look, like that's not the point of today, or like that's not the point of like why we're here to celebrate this or whatever. And it's just like the slow unpicking of like, or like where it says in the Bible, like taking every thought captive, like when it comes in, being like, what is the root of that? Like, why do I feel like that's so important to me today? Or like, why is it that when I'm seeing that person, it makes me really consider what I look like?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think one of the biggest things I have found is being like, again, trying to not like to get that balance of like, my looks don't matter, but I am beautiful. Of it being like, okay, I am beautiful, God says I'm beautiful, why did he make me beautiful? What, to get 400 likes on a pic and some boy to be like, that bundle looks great? No, definitely not. Like, definitely not. And actually, like, that we hold ourselves to, like, for God to have made us this like incredible, like, he is our craftsman, like, it's like his craftsmanship has created us, and for us to like, the only time we see that is for like just some not nobody, but kind of some nobody to be like, yo, she's Leng. Like, absolute, like, that is so bad. And so it's like being like, I remember hearing in like this Jonathan Hauser podcast, him saying about like every single one of our faces shows a different side of Jesus' character. And actually that is the beauty of us, is we show God's face in a different way, every single one of us.
Oh, Jonathan.
Flipping Jonathan Hauser. And so it's being like, okay, actually I am beautiful, and do you want to know why? Like, holding our beauty standard not against society, and even maybe not against what, like, how effective you find God's opinion of you, but being like, okay, but the reason I was put on this planet as a beautiful person was to show other people like Jesus' face, and a side of his face that no one else can show. No one else can show the part of character, the part of Jesus' face, the part of his worship in a way that you can. You are literally one in 90, like what, 9 billion, 90 billion, whatever it is. And like, that is so profound. And so then,
that is crazy.
And it just makes you think, like, why do I care? Like, old Stevie on the flipping football team cares about me. Like, and it really puts it into perspective of that balance of like, I am beautiful, but it's not because of you boys. Like,
it's because of him.
It's because of him.
And I think there's also something in like learning to recognize the beauty in other people without it taking away from how you see yourself. Like, it not being like, and this goes for everything, like character and everything else wise, of being like, she's really beautiful, but that then in turn doesn't mean that you're any less than because of that. And I think like learning to celebrate people in the places of comparison, I think just completely takes away all of its power. Because even if you think about like character things, like just because somebody else is really gentle doesn't mean there's no room for you to be gentle as well. And so I feel like kind of hitting it on its head of being like, yeah, I really recognise that you are beautiful, and even naming it and being like, you're doing that really well. And actually being like, I really celebrate that. And
knowing it's not transactional. Like, for them to be beautiful doesn't mean you can't be. Like, it's not a transaction.
It doesn't take anything away.
No. If anything, it makes you more beautiful to be able to see the other people's beauty.
Exactly. And that is the thing though, it's like so much of your outward beauty and who you are is about your character anyway. Like, to me, like when I see like someone really beautiful, I'm like, gosh, like the joy that they're living in, or like the way they show kindness to people makes them so beautiful. Like, it's not about how their hair curls.
You know, curly girl routine.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Liz, how would you say that you didn't, because obviously you and Tobe started dating, and so like almost you started to probably get that validation that you were seeking of like the thing that like led me to like struggling with eating, and like my comparison was, a lot of it was surrounded with Toby, of being like, I fancy Toby and I want him to find me attractive. And so how did you navigate being like, oh, I am now getting the validation I want, but like actually that's not where my worth comes from, and like it's not. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's a good question.
So I think that for me, it was quite a long time before we got together that I like had these thoughts and feelings and had this struggle. And I think I went on a bit of a journey, just like with like God, like reading in the Bible and just like really trying to find out what God said about me over myself, because I felt really unhealthy and I didn't feel good, because it wasn't the answer to this problem of not feeling good about my body. Like that just wasn't the answer. So I started seeking it with God, which was amazing. And I remember I was out for a walk one day. I think I was walking home from work or something, and it was like a autumn evening, and it was probably about like 4:00, so it was just starting to get dark. And I was listening to worship, and I just felt like God said, look down. And I looked down at the ground, and there was just like these leaves like covering the floor, and every single one of them was completely different. And I just felt like God say, like, there is no comparison to the next person because they're all different. And I just remember feeling like everything I could see, like the bright like oranges and yellows, like I was like, oh my gosh, this is beautiful. And then God was like, but you're one of these different things, like, and I was like, oh flip, like as I am, like, is beautiful. Just because it's not like the same as the leaf, if you will, next to me doesn't make that leaf, like you were saying, not beautiful. And that kind of got me on a journey of like just really accepting like my uniqueness. And I think that was God almost preparing me for my relationship with Toby, so that when we got to that point, I wasn't carrying that baggage of, oh, I've succeeded in my mission, because it wasn't a good mission to even start in the first place. So it almost happened before I even got there. And I think there's so much like grace in that, because if I'd walked into a relationship feeling like, oh, like 2 years ago I was like, I wasn't good enough, but now I'm good enough. No, I was always good enough. It just was the wrong time.
Come on.
You know?
That's so good.
So like God definitely made me look at creation to then look at the rest of creation, if that makes sense.
That's really cool.
Flipping heck.
Mads, how would you say you've like come away from that thing of when you were saying that you've been having conversations with your friends of like breaking out of dressing in a certain way for society's expectations or whatever? Like, how, if you were to give like advice, what have you done practically to really like break those?
If I'm honest, like, I'm still very much in it of like it was one of the biggest things that came when I moved to Birmingham. And like, just context, I'm doing a discipleship course up here with a church, and so it's within that, like, there's a lot of reflection time within the course. And so there was just this point where we were talking about like where we'd allowed the enemy to say stuff over us, and I just was like, wow, this is like, I just was completely floored at like how much I still was aware of like not, I mean, I'm like, I had to open up a wound basically to like heal it, of like, actually my mind, like what I have accepted as truth isn't truth, and it's not a healthy truth. Of just being, of being like, oh, I'm not like pretty, and I'm not like womanly, if you will. So it's definitely still very much a journey that I'm on, but it's a really beautiful journey. And I think the biggest thing is, like, again, mine very much is around my style of being like, actually, if I think I look cool, then I'm gonna wear it, or like if I feel confident, I'm gonna wear it. Because it, like, and as well, I don't know if you guys found this, but I would dress differently depending on who I would be seeing me. Of like, if I was going into a room of youth girls, I would want to wear like what made me feel confident, because I'd be like wanting them to like almost make a statement of like, dress however you want, like be who you are. But then if I was going to be hanging out with a load of guys, I wouldn't dress like that, which is so bad, and like something I've really been challenged on. But I think just like, be who you want to be, express yourself how you want to express yourself. Like, your friends, like how you dress should be an outward expression of like your personality, and there's not a dress code for your personality. Like, wear whatever you want, like and I think that was another thing of like, it was this thing of like, okay, well, if I'm going to dress quite like, I don't want to say skater, but that is kind of what I dress like, of like hats and hoodies and whatever. Like, I almost put myself in a box of like, oh, I can't wear dresses and stuff then. But then I was like, but I like wearing dresses like now and again. And like, I want to wear stuff that, and so it's like breaking, I just think so easily like putting yourself in a stereotype and then having to sit in that of like, no, actually, if I want to wear a backwards cat one day and then a dress the other or both at the same time, then flip and slay. Like,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, mine has been a lot of exterior, like what I'm wearing and stuff, which is as much a challenge in itself, to be honest, because it's idolising fashion, which should be, that is a whole other like thing that needs to be broken. But yeah, I just think like I wasn't built and put on this world to like fit into a masculine society in terms of like my height to complement a man's and to look nice next to a man. Like that is the like black and white of it, really. I would say that is like what society said, a lot of society, or you think society thinks anyway. So yeah, just it's like a gradual mind thing of being like, no, actually that isn't true, and like, oh wait, why am I doing this? Like, what's the reason I'm doing this? What's the reason I'm thinking this? Why am I feeling like this?
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And I think as well, sorry, another thing, doing like being who you are as much for yourself as like if you're in a place of leadership, or like, yeah, I've always led youth groups and stuff. Like a lot of my motivation would be like, I never want them to feel insecure about what they wear or who they are. Like I want them to be free in who they are. And so that was my motivation. But actually being like, no, Mads, like do it for you. Like be yourself, because who you are is sick, and like God made you exactly how you're supposed to be. All your quirks, all your little weird things, like the things you like, the things you don't like that is God given.
Yeah.
And so own it. Yeah, I guess to like round things off, what would you two say is like your like one little nugget of gold that you would live by and like would want have like found very beneficial to live by, sort of thing?
I think I would say just to seek kingdom perspective, of get in the word and see what God says about you, because it is really different to what we're sold, and just ask him like what he wants for you and like how he sees you, and get rooted in it. And I think like I would just really recommend, like if it is something that feels like it's taking up capacity, pray about it. Like there is freedom outside of it, I think. And just spend time, like get people around you, like we were saying in earlier episodes, like let people in, even if it feels uncomfortable or really vulnerable. It's good. And obviously today, like we've just said, some of our own stories, and we've tried to share them as sensitively as we can. But if you do find like a certain part of what's been said hard, go and seek your friends and your leaders and get them to pray for you and get them to highlight to you the way God sees you, because I really just think that's where, well, I know that's where the freedom is. Liz?
Yeah, I think that kind of what has already been said is just about celebrating those people around you just for who they are, and then doing that for yourself as well. Because I think it's so easy to say how beautiful your friends are character wise and looks wise and say all this stuff about them, but then like start to put into practice to say it about you as well.
That's good.
Because they, and like when someone says something nice about you, don't just shrug it off and be like, oh yeah, whatever, they're just being nice, like you said about like, oh, you just have to say that. Like take it and actually believe that these people around you who you love and you respect and you would say that about them, you would hate to think if they're not taking on what you said. So don't do the same to them. Take on what they're saying and start to slowly believe it. And that might take time, but yeah, I think it's just about believing those positive things about yourself.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah,
I love that, guys.
Brilliant. Another episode.
Yeah,
Very
there we
beautiful
go.
episode.
Yeah.
Thanks guys.
Thank you both for sharing.
Thank
And
you for
you.
sharing.
It was great.
It really was.
Yeah.
If you guys made it to the end, thanks for listening.
Have a lovely, lovely week.
We appreciate you.
Bye, guys.
Have a good week. See you later.
Bye.